Hey, 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 it's Rebecca, and you're listening to Resilient by Design. Today's podcast guest is Regan Baker of Regan Baker Design in San Francisco, California. She is, wow, what an inspiration. She has an interior design firm with 16 employees. Yes, you heard that right. 16 whole people working for her, which is mind-blowing and incredible. And she and I have a really great conversation about how operations and internal systems are what can help you scale your business. We talk quite a bit about her business structure, her organizational structure, and how she runs her business now, what it looked like before, and what that transformation or that slow progression was. She has a great business mindset. It's very inspirational. I have learned a lot from her already just from this one call. I definitely want to have her back and follow her business as it grows because when you see someone who's doing just exactly what you are doing or want to do, and they're like, but they're ahead of you, there's so much to learn from. So I hope for those of you who are looking to sort of start growing a team, or maybe you have a small team and you want to make it bigger, or maybe you're just looking to scale in whatever way that means to you, this episode is 100% for you. You're going to love this episode. She's very open and honest, and she shares it all. So dive on in and enjoy.
All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business.
Are you looking to expand your network, gain momentum in your business, and be around your tribe of designers or decorators or architects? If you answered yes, then go check out the Collective Workspace. They offer a range of private office suites, flex workspaces, boardroom rentals, and many more perks, along with a trade-only design resource library. Oh, and did I mention a boutique gym? Their flagship space is located in the heart of Toronto. I am here right now in the Design District, with a second location opening up this fall in Mississauga. Go check them out at thecollectiveto.com or go on Instagram at The Collective Workspace, your tour, or take advantage of their free 3-day pass. All right, we are live. Hi, Regan. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Rebecca. It's exciting to talk to you about our operations for RBD.
Operations, I know. It's funny. It's one of those things that I didn't even know was a thing when I started my design business. I'm really excited to have more conversation about this. But before we dive in, maybe you could just introduce yourself to my audience.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Regan Baker Design, Regan Baker owner, principal, and have been doing this, I guess, since 2007. And have loved every second of it. It's been a dream of mine. I'm a team of 16 now, and actually am hoping to not grow, but maybe stay as is. But love what we basically are a residential firm company doing high-end residential, doing more personalized homes for our clients, and we are basically creating experiences for our guests or not guests, but our clients who actually enjoy organization and having a more well-organized life. And I think that kind of is a great segue to kind of the operations of a business.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love it. I love that you're a designer and that you have really scaled your company. I think a lot of designers kind of dream of doing that. I always have had this dream of this team and like taking over the world. And I think that there's so much to back and discuss here, because how do you get, like, honestly, how do you get to be a team of 16 people? That is really big for the interior design industry in North America. There are very few firms that I think really get to that level. I mean, there's lots of reasons you got there. I can imagine that there are certain key things that you need to have in place in order to grow and scale. There's so much there, but I don't know, where should we start?
So, I mean, I'd say, in terms of the reason I think why I am at 16, I realized, I kind of at a young part of my career that I enjoy servicing people, and it's really hard to do that as one person. And so understanding that there can be so many aspects that I'm not great at and other people are, that you can actually bring those people in to, create a village to help out. But as I grew, I realized, it's hard to say no. I have a problem saying no, but then I realized too, it's really important to stay focused on actually, getting the, sorry, I'm having a hard time giving, basically, it's like in and out. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Do you want to just do the one AirPod and then get rid of the other one?
That's it. Does that work?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So basically scaling a company is really hard, not difficult, but hard just in terms of you really need to be careful on getting the right people and actually having a specific role for them. Sometimes, I think when we were smaller, though, it is great to be able to have so many people who actually can take on roles, multiple roles, and actually learn how to actually, push a project forward. But when you start to when you want to scale, it actually is important to actually have more designated specific roles, and at least more of a review process and system, so that mistakes don't happen. And then as the owner, I feel very comfortable and confident that things are being taken care of, because I am reviewing every presentation and I go to every meeting still. So it's really important that everybody kind of has and understands their roles.
So many questions. Oh my gosh. Okay, where do I start? So let's start at the beginning. And then I've got questions of where you're at now and what that looks like. Like, what does that organization look like? But when you were starting out, because I know for me, it's one thing to have a couple people, right? And everyone's kind of helping you in many hats. And then you start to grow and it becomes clear that you actually need people who are skilled in just a specific area, not necessarily a jack of all trades design assistant. And so I'm wondering if you had that experience, and at what point in your growth was most challenging for you as the business owner? Was it bringing on your first hire? Was it moving from like 5 to 6? Is there at some point in your growth that you found it, oh shoot, this is kind of challenging and I need to sort of restructure things?
Yeah. So probably I would say after 9, 10 people, I think it becomes a different company, and meaning, you do have to make sure you're organized enough and, processes enough. I think if we felt that probably the growing pains of that, just because, you really you need to know how scaling and how, I guess, start over. I'm just really having.
Well, you sound
start over. Yeah. Do it.
Yeah. Well, you sound great.
Okay.
So just the scaling. So like, what is that,
Well, I think your question was like, what was it that really,
like,
when was it that actually?
There's a tipping point, right? Where like, oh shoot, I have to kind of
let go.
Or reorganize, or was it all the time? Or I don't know. I'm just so curious.
I think the hardest part, was 9, 10 people when I realized I needed to let go more. And I think as a person who controls, likes to control things. I knew I needed to basically let people do their jobs. Otherwise, I couldn't do a great job anymore, and nor my company could scale at what I was wanting to do, and actually trying to achieve by allowing designers to have autonomy and being able to, run the show and not actually have me, look down in every single detail to give them the actual what is it? The actual confidence to be able to, run their own team. And I think, during the pandemic, we were working away, all, from our remotely. And it was really difficult because we were a team, a smaller team then, or actually we're growing actually. And when we were in the office, it was easy to just like pull people, from each team or anybody just to say, hey, can you work on this? Hey, can you work on this? And when you're remote, it's so much harder. And so we actually restructured the office and did a team R, a B, and a D, because that was the only way for everybody and myself to feel comfortable that, I'm a huge efficiency person. I want things to be efficient, and I don't want, I think that's when everybody gets frustrated, is whenever they feel like they're having to redo work that they didn't know they needed to, or, it's such a fast-paced environment. So, as long as people have the correct tools necessary, like, understanding the process, it really is important for people to, just go and deliver. And if you don't have, dedicated people on specific teams and you're not able to actually maneuver that quickly, then it was a reason for me to actually restructure the office and actually have a senior designer kind of running each team so that they felt they could actually have that control rather than me having to.
Right. So almost like 3 mini companies in the bigger company. Wow. Yeah. Wow. So I guess, what does that organizational chart look like right now? So you've got 3 teams now, and there's a senior designer in charge of each team. And then what is the makeup of that team?
So we have a senior designer, and then we have an intermediate designer, and then we have a junior designer. And then above that, currently we have like a design manager. They aren't, we kind of share design managers. So design manager would be on like 2 of the teams, 2 of the 3 teams, and another design manager is either on one team or they're helping, with like the services portion of the actual part of our project and services. So basically we have, our furniture, products, designing side, and then we have our service side that we're billing for. And so they're in charge, like the design managers are actually in charge of the services and making sure that we're keeping up and billing correctly and, staying on top of our estimates. And then we have basically the senior designer who's actually in charge of the budgets for the furniture and accessories portion of the project.
Oh my gosh, it's quite the organization. So at what point did you realize you needed a design manager? I think this is really interesting because I've toyed with this idea for my own company, like design manager, like this sounds interesting because it sounds like that be the role of most designers in their own firm, right? Like you were the design manager. And so now you've had to give up some control to this person, these people.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. I think it's more, when you begin to feel you aren't servicing the client well enough, meaning you're not staying ahead of communications, you're not in the details and the weeds. I'm not going to, site meetings all the time. I don't have time to. And so a lot of that's the design managers. They are making sure they're kind of like a client advocate. So they're making sure the client's actually being serviced well on all fronts. But if they have the construction background, which one of our design managers does not, and one of them does. So they help out with the construction, like more of the larger projects that actually have the construction administration side. Although I would say every one of our projects have construction administration role. But that's their job, is just to make sure that and I think whenever I felt that was slipping, because that's something that's really important to me. When that was slipping, I was like, I have to let this go, and I have to let somebody else do the job because they're in the details, and I'm just not anymore. I don't have the context.
Totally. Yeah. And I actually am seeing that a little bit with my small firm. I mean, we're only 6, but I've stepped away and I'm not in the weeds and I'm not the client communicator and I'm not there all the time. And so we finally just hired a senior designer who's going to be kind of like design manager and senior, who's able to ensure and hold the other designers accountable, because I'm just doing a good job of it anymore, because I'm
exactly
right. I'm stretched so thin. I have other businesses. I have the podcast. I have my coaching business now. We're just launching into some like estate investment. And so I just don't have the time or really the desire, to be quite honest, to be that one who is that primary communication with the client. And I think anyone listening to this, it's really powerful, because I think oftentimes entrepreneurs are nervous to give up control, like you said, because maybe your name is, maybe you're the face
on the
of
door. Mm-hmm.
Your name is on the door. Maybe you're the person doing the intake of the clients. Maybe you're, as a connection you have with the client initially. And so I think entrepreneurs are afraid that if they remove themselves from the equation, that they're not going to get the business, that their clients won't be happy. But I think your proof, the proof is in the pudding. I think it's a true testament to show you can be successful and not be micromanaging all the details.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think because we have a great system in place, we've gone through the process when we were 5, 6, of actually putting in place construction document standards. We have like Crystal, who's on my team, who she's really in charge of like those standards. And she is the one who will help review, all of the construction documents just to make sure that they are, kind of a quality control person who really understands what the vision that we're trying to do, because communicating on paper is actually very important because it's contractual. And so anything that is wrong or deviates from that, then either we didn't communicate it correctly or the contractor has done something incorrect. And so it's a really important, it's a huge communication tool because it sets expectations. And I think a lot of the times designers who don't have or don't think that technical drawings are actually really important, it actually is like the most important thing because it allows, number one, it allows record keeping. So you really need to make sure you're keeping up with those records as you go and you change things on site, because every day you're changing things, something comes up on site. So you have to come back and redesign it. But all of those have to be meeting minutes, record keeping. And even though, clients don't understand sometimes why it takes so much time to do that kind of stuff, it actually is the most important because it allows you to service them better. And it's the only way to actually remember, because we're so busy and we don't have one project. It's really important to make sure you've got, a reason to understand where you got to where you are, because you will always go back and say, oh crap, we've already been down this road before. But if you have good record keeping, then you actually have a place to land always. And it's like the most important. So, but yeah, standards and all of that is like the most important part of the process, and good record keeping is huge.
I love hearing you say that because I was literally talking to my team this week and I was like, you need to type up your site notes every time you're on site so that we know like there's all kinds of verbal communication that happen, especially since I'm no longer the one on site. I mean, I'll go from time to time. And then I heard myself and I was thinking, I'm like, is it realistic to expect them to type up these site notes? Maybe I'm asking too much. So hearing you say that, I'm like, no, we have to stick to it.
Got to stick to it. It's so important. It really is. And even though clients and contractors don't actually probably review it, it's your record and you can say, no, I sent this to you. And it's still important to actually have those conversations on the phone, and making sure that everybody's still aware and being team players. But it really is important to actually get that in writing because it just allows you to actually move a project forward instead of going back all the time saying, what did we talk about? Yeah.
Okay. So the operations, the truth is you can't have 3 functioning teams in a company without really buttoned down systems, I imagine, which I guess are also continually evolving. But
always.
Relatively. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think that's one thing. I think that's one thing I've realized that, as much as I want to be like perfect all the time or make a decision and move on, it just isn't going to happen. They're always evolving. And I think just, people are different. The way people process things, we're all human. We are different. And if one thing works well for one person and then you get somebody new on the team and that creates a different dynamic, you have to kind of understand. It's definitely important to keep the processes in place, but sometimes you have to realize that some teams are, different. Like I have a senior designer who is more of a very great designer, but also very great at project management. And then I have another senior designer who needs another project manager because she's, more of designer and heads down and just needs that extra layer. So it's just kind of, you have to be kind of a little bit, everybody has their own process. You don't want to like micromanage a process either. So it's important to have one as a guide and a template, but be okay with a little bit of deviation from it.
I love that. Even within the roles within your company, right? It sounds like, and I often think about this on how, yes, you can say you want to have like a senior, a project manager and a junior, let's say, But the reality is the talent that comes your way, maybe one person, like you say, is strong at project management and you don't need a project manager. Or maybe one person is just like, they are so good at AutoCAD and all the technical drawings that maybe they just kind of take over that for two teams. Like, it's important to understand that just because I always encourage designers to create kind of your aspirational organizational chart, and then you fill in your name anywhere that, because right now it's like all you, most you, but like a designer, it's right, when you're starting out, you're wearing all the hats. And then you can look at how you want to grow, but not to be too fixated on it, because you say, depending on the individuals, you have your systems, but there might be a little bit of wiggle room and maneuvering, and roles tend to grow and develop, I think. We're looking for an admin right now, or we've been looking for one, and it's that everybody comes at us with a completely different skill set, right? So it's interesting, then there's times where we think, this person might grow into being more of a purchaser, and then, maybe then we will need an admin, and it's kind of like time will tell. Interesting.
Yeah, it's juggling of that is always difficult. But I think one thing I always do is encourage people to bring their in order to carry a project to the end, you have to always be forward thinking. And the junior people who are on my team are still learning that what they do is very important, but also even being a little bit more proactive about things. Not that you would be stepping on anyone's toes, but even just saying, hey, have you thought of this? And that's, even though it's not their role and their job to actually be, actually in charge of that. I think if you are team focused and oriented, and that everybody's got each other's back, but the idea is to actually move the project forward so you can do your next project, great, exciting project. It's just important to, even though you have a specific role, it's okay to actually, ask or say, hey, and suggest, hey, can I help with this? Even though I know this is not my role, I actually would love to do this. And it does allow us, and I think the designers, to understand kind of strengths and weaknesses and what people more so gravitate towards.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what does your week look like as the business owner? How are you staying on top of the individual teams? Do you have do you have meetings every week? What does that look like for you?
So our calendar is like a Bible, it's basically, we for sure have to adhere to it. And I think that's more of it's the only way. As much as I love to be spontaneous and do things off the whim, it is very important to have a calendar and stay on schedule. And honestly, it's more of a respect others type thing, So one of the things I definitely went through a phase where we just weren't respecting the calendar, and it created tension. And now we basically block everything out. I mean, my calendar is ridiculous looking. But basically every Monday we start with it's fluctuated. So we used to start with our team operations meeting with all the senior designers and design managers and business director of operations, basically all at this meeting to talk about the week. And where we were getting is that was a lot of coming from Friday and off of a week. It was a lot of work for those senior designers to do without meeting with their team first to kind of go through it. And so we've moved that meeting towards the end of the day. So it's more at 1:00, 1:30. But they meet with their teams prior and get organized. And then basically it's just a run through of what everybody's doing. And then I can chime in and say, oh, well, have you guys, because not everybody remembers everything. And so as I remember something that I forgot, it's important to me, then I'll bring that up and say, have we thought of that? And then they say no, or yes, we're on it. Usually it's yes, we're on it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's what you want to hear. Like, oh, okay. Yes.
Yes, I know. Yeah, exactly. Or no, I'm so glad. And this is why, we have these meetings, but it's good because it allows me to feel like I still have a little bit of understanding of what's going on, because when I don't, that's when I start to freak out, and everybody's like, let's not let Regan freak out, because it's not fun to be stressed out.
That's so nice.
Yeah. Mondays are basically all kind of internal. We don't schedule anything else unless it's absolutely dire. We've got installations and we've got a meeting for that. But it's like, it's kind of like a sacred thing. Do not touch Mondays. Tuesdays are kind of an overflow. So basically, if you don't get anything to Monday, then that's bumped to Tuesday. And then I have, we've actually just recently done this, and I think it's the smartest thing. We should have done this a long time ago, but we are blocking lunch now. So it's not that it's mandatory to take it, but it is there. And now I can schedule. I feel like I have control of my calendar a little bit, so I can schedule a lunch with somebody I want to, or I can take somebody to lunch at the office. So that's been a huge help for me, just because I will work until 10 o'clock every night if I have to, and not stop.
Yeah. I think that is such a good lesson, because I think all of us as business owners, I mean, I get the day, like I look on Mondays at my calendar and I'm like, deep breath, Rebecca. I mean, I have my own calendar, but everyone else is wanting a me, or I have committed something. Yeah. Or whatever. And I try to put in a buffer of half an hour for lunch. But what happens, and I just do that for myself, I haven't told the team to do it, but invariably, like something just runs right through it. Like it bulldozes right through my lunch, right? It's like the best intentions, but if I don't honor that, I love that. Do you block an hour for lunch every day?
An hour. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
Yeah. It's the best thing I've ever done. I will say it's time and time again. It's like, why haven't we been doing this? And I think it's, when you're smaller, like yourself, it is hard because you don't have enough time in the day to get stuff done. And so you're like, not eating today, or I'm just going to eat at my desk. But I think one thing that is hurt us is like, a lot of people, it's an expectation then you're setting for your team members. And you don't want that. I mean, that's just you, and not everybody's like that. Everybody really, it is healthy to take a break. And so I think with you doing that and actually setting that expectation, that it'll actually trickles down and people understand, okay, I don't have to sit at my desk. I can actually go out. Because a lot of people are like, are we allowed to actually take a lunch? And I'm like, that's bad. The fact that people actually have to ask, they
right.
Like, no. Yes, I'm just, this way. But I think it does say a lot. So that's why I was like, this actually wasn't my idea. It was my business operations girl. She was like, let's just block it. I'm like, okay. And it's been the best thing. So
what about like when your design team has to go to site? I'm just thinking about like my little team, do they then say, because I'm always nervous. I don't want to get into this like corporate culture where they're like, nope, I have to honor lunch, even though the contractor can only meet at a certain time. Like, is there flexibility? Like
So that's a good question. So we actually will always, so it's mandatory that with our clients that that hire us, is we highly recommend at least a bi-monthly site visit meeting. And it's depending on it, usually gets, it's weekly, kind of depending on the size of the project. And the reason for that is, even though you don't think you need it, you always will go there and something comes up. And it's actually good because then you can tackle it now instead of later. And we actually have a project because of the pandemic. We didn't go at first, and so it became this thing of like, oh, we can just do this on the phone. And now it's like, no, you just can't, you just have to go. So it has been a huge learning lesson and a great reminder of scheduled site visits, because it actually will happen no matter what. It's actually the best and the most important thing. So, and it allows you to schedule around it, or your team to schedule around it. So it's like Tuesdays, we have an opening, or Tuesdays, no, we have this site meeting. So we need to make it on Thursdays or Fridays. We try not to do any site meetings or meetings in general on Fridays, because it's always, crazy at the end. But we do a lot as well. So it just, kind of just depends. But site meetings, yes. Schedule.
Yeah, no, I think these are really great tips. I think scheduling in general is like the big theme in my head for 2022. Planning ahead and like blocking your calendar early. I just finished this book called The One Thing, and he talks about like when you sit down, the first thing you should book is your time off. Like in life, like schedule.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I've learned this. Yeah. I'm like, we've got to do this. We have to plan our life for the year.
It sounds so crazy, but if you don't do it, then you
don't do it. Exactly. It's so true. Yep. I know. Yeah. It's very important. It's the same thing.
So you mentioned you had something like in operations. Maybe tell me a little bit about like your organization structure. I know you have 3 design teams, but what else do you have? Like obviously there's lots of people. How are they supporting you? I'm always so fascinated about organizing, especially like our industry.
Yeah. So my first hire was my bookkeeper, who has been with me since 2012, and she's amazing. She's kind of the mother hen. So she kind of does a lot of the, I think we're actually going to try and get her more help though, because she's like one of those people that really wants to help all the time and help everyone out. But she basically she's more of like the office admin. She has a helper that also helps with the office. And then I have a directors of operations, Allie, who's also a project manager. So she kind of helps out. And she was actually a client. So we actually, we did.
Oh my gosh, I want to talk about that. I saw that in your
I've
description.
got a lot of them.
Yeah. I have one. So we'll talk about that. I have only one. I have one person who was a client of mine who's now working with me as my director of operations. Yeah. So I've heard of anyone else having this situation. So I'm so excited for you to tell it.
Yeah. So so in 2014, I did Showcase, and that's how she found me. And it was one of those things where at the very end, she was like, she was working at Facebook, and she was like, I am pregnant. And she knew she was taking some time off. And she's like, I don't want this to end. And I think I can help you. And I was like, this is something that probably wouldn't have happened, or I would have thought of for another like 10 years. And I was like, but usually I'm a very serendipitous person. If somebody's presenting a situation, I'm like, well, I don't have to pay myself. I will just pay them, because I actually think this is a great idea. You take it. It's a risk. It's a leap of faith, but I think it always ends up, well, if it feels good. And so I actually had a business consultant actually interview her, and he was like, yes, you guys are definitely yin and yang, and you should hire her. So hired her. And then from there, she helped me. She actually grew a company at Facebook.org. And so she knew how to actually scale a company, which has been the most valuable thing that she has helped me, because she's made me think, because it's easy to go just hire, right? And so she's like, no, you really need to, make sure you don't hire too fast. We can do this. We're small, but we're mighty, And so understanding, that the size of your firm that you want to be is actually really important. And a size that you don't want to be, because it allows you to set goals and understand, where you're trying to, and what you're trying to achieve. I always have thought that, so anyways, going back to its structure, she's director of operations. And then I've hired another client who is also going to help out on the business development and operations side as well. And she worked at Google. She actually was a friend of my husband's, but we've done 2 of her homes. And when I met her, I was like, I was asking my husband, do you actually think she'd ever leave Google and work for RBD? I never said anything to her. And then she approached me, and I was just like, yes. So she's incredible. She makes decisions. She knows how to process information like I've never seen. And she's, I think, going to help us so much. And I'm so excited to have her on board. So she's recent. And then I have a librarian who
A librarian.
Well. Oh yes.
Gosh, amazing.
Luxurious. I know. So Kathleen is incredible. We've not ever had a full-time librarian, but she's organized, and she was my first client who basically taught me about a go closet. She's got 3 kids, and she's just very organized. She's also worked in the publishing world, so she understands kind of, what we do a little bit. And she also loves design. And I took her to Paris last year on a shopping, just to the deco off. And because she loves shopping. So she went with me.
Hello, can I'll go to Paris. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So, she's pitched the idea of kind of, helping out. And we were like, do you want to help organize our library? And so she's part-time, but she does that. And I mean, everybody loves her. I mean, she's so helpful, and she's, been in the working, field, and she she's just professional. She knows how to execute. She knows how to, actually delegate work, or understand if she should or should not be doing something somebody is asking her to do, So it's actually been huge, because it's how you need a sample and you need it tomorrow, and I can't find it, So the librarian her role has been, it's kind of crazy, but it's like a very important role. So I have that. And then I have, let's see, and I just recently, so we have a brand design manager. So she is in charge of all of our PR, social media, which is, we actually hired somebody who we consult with on social media for Instagram. It's just not Instagram. Yeah, Instagram. So hard to keep on top of everything. And, it's hard for me to share. Because I'm a perfectionist and I like to make sure everything's perfect.
Designers struggle with that. It's like trying to make it so perfect. And it's like 3 weeks later, one post out.
Exactly.
Right?
Like, oh my gosh, this is not worth it. But not worth it. It is worth it. Everything is worth it, but it's just, you need that help. And again, it's like one of those things where you just have to delegate it out and you just can't control it as much. And it's make sure your voice is there, make sure your plan. So we've got to schedule a plan of, calendar of what posts we use later. So I can review the images and then actually review the post. But we also have a person who's also monitoring that as well. So that helps. So I'm just kind of on a periphery, just meet with them once a week. We look at brand stuff. So
amazing. So it sounds like you're surrounding yourself with some very qualified, experienced people, which is really interesting because something that I've recently gone through personally in my own business is this transition between realizing that when you invest in someone with experience and knowledge and wisdom and life experience too, sometimes it may feel expensive, but it's usually worth it. And what they can bring to the table is a whole level that, I'm still new at this, right? Because in the past, it was always like, I'll get interns, junior designers, people at school, and like, I'm going to train them. Well, shoot, that's a lot of freaking work.
Yeah.
And it's having these crazy expectations that they are going to operate at the same level that I will with a client or with a drawing package or in a presentation. And so I felt like for the last few years, I've really been like up against the wall, feeling very frustrated with the team because it all points back at me, but maybe not right people in the right roles and having these expectations that were unrealistic given the experience level of the people in the role. Have you ever had that? Like, how did you, did you just always know you needed to hire all these like fabulous ex-Google and ex-Facebook? It's like, hello.
I think I'm always intrigued with other people's expertise because even though I'm in a design arty field, in order for me to succeed and our team in my firm to succeed, I definitely think having real world experience, but also an outside perspective, it allows it's inexperience at a successful firm like Google and Facebook or other places. I do think it allows a different perspective, and it also kind of keeps you different, and because you're approaching things differently. You're approaching structure and strategy in a different way, and I think that's I've always it's the Purple Elephant. I don't know if you ever read the book. I can't remember. Maybe it is Purple Elephant. But basically, it's like who are you and how have you? Why are you different than your competitors? And I think that is one thing that it comes from the top down. And I think if you are embracing yourself and hiring people who are not in our industry, it creates this just by osmosis, a different perspective, and allows you to, in a business sense, understand that this is really kind of how a successful business is run. And so, yeah, I think even though I've, these people aren't in the design industry, they appreciate the design. They either are art creators, they understand, they've been in the, magazine industry or whatnot. And they also are doing their house because they enjoy design and they love it and they appreciate it. So it's like, well, if they do, then it's like they get what we're trying to do. And they also have been through it from on the other end, so that you're allowing that experience to actually bring you can get it feedback, like it's instant feedback that you need to improve on something, And, but yeah, I think it is nice to, have, non-junior people. Training is the worst. And it's important though. I mean, it
Yeah.
is the most important thing. And I think that's something that I've realized, even though it's really important to also have young people because they keep it fresh and they keep it, they keep you young. And I think that's very, very, very important.
Yeah, I think for me right now, I'm at a place where I'm like, okay, let's invest in the more experienced people right now. How I have infrastructure that can support bringing on someone more junior, because people will apply to our company all the time, even when we're not hiring, just like send in a resume or DM on Instagram and say like, oh my God, I would love the opportunity to learn from you. Like to me, that's a red flag. I'm so sorry. I love that you think I'm the bee's knees, but like, I'm not going to pay you to learn this industry. Like that's bananas. But I used that all the time. And then I was like, again, like I just kept getting frustrated. How come we're not further ahead with our drawing packages? Like, how come I said this 5 times and it's not getting done? It was just, I had these expectations, but it was like the champagne taste with a beer budget kind of thing. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I want to pay like the basic salary because I'm petrified of losing money. But then I also want to deliver this exceptional customer service at very high level. And the two don't gel. Like it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You need to have those layers of experience. Like you say, I think you're right. Like having more junior and definitely young people in the organization is really wonderful. Like you can stay on top of so much trends and you can have that energy and that excitement and that, because sometimes when we've been doing this for a long time, let's face it, sometimes we're a little less enamored by certain things, right?
Yeah.
It's nice to see someone else like thrilled and just so excited about a fabric that comes in. And I'm just like, oh yeah, there's another fabric book arrived, right? And they're like, oh, wow, let's see what's in the box.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. But I definitely went through a phase where I was hiring and I was like, I'm not hiring any junior designers. It is important to get everything in place and structure and organize in a process set and standards put in place so that you can actually, when somebody new comes in who's junior, they are able to, review the basics and they don't have to come ask you 5,000 times, here's our handbook. We actually have like the RBD index that the design manager put together. She's awesome, but she put together a design index that basically the new people and everybody can actually just Google, and it actually brings up common questions like facts, FAQs that you can get answered without having to ask people. But yeah, I think that's always the hardest part is actually training. But yeah, getting processes in place and standards in place is the number one thing if you want to scale.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't want to scale, I think it's important because it allows you to be efficient.
I would agree with you. I think that's a lot of designers in our community are really interested in scaling. They probably hear 16 employees and they're like, no, thank you. I don't want to manage people. But even when it's just you or it's you and an assistant, having systems and repeatable processes are such a game changer. It makes life less chaotic.
Yeah.
It makes your clients' lives so much better. And
they know what to expect.
Exactly.
Yeah. And they know what to do, and they know what to do to make to basically finish this part and go to the next. It's important to, be efficient, and our clients are happier because we're not spending 5,000 hours on something that should have taken, 2.
So with that, let's segue into like, what is your process? Do you, from start to finish, do you have sort of an outlined client-facing process? I mean, I have my 7 steps that we follow. We only do full service design. What is your offering? And do you have a clearly defined process that is client-facing?
Yeah. So we only do full service as well. We start with the clients. We have a questionnaire that the clients can fill out. But we always try and get as much information before our first meeting, so that we can have a floor plan to react to, and also maybe mood images. So, sometimes people don't do Pinterest or anything. They just have magazines that they've clipped out, and, but we try to get a lot of that information up front. We also have created a style guide. So we send out the style guide, and it's actually via Google Docs, and you can actually basically comment on what you like and what you don't like. And so it's more of just like a guide, like I like this or I like this color. It really is just more of a guide to help us understand kind of how what they like in their style. So we send that out, and that's disseminated, information's disseminated and collected. And then we bring that to the meeting and we talk about that. And then we also talk about potential images that they've already selected. And then usually we'll put together a furniture floor plan if we're there. And if not, then it'll just be strictly mood images to discuss. And then we'll have a programming meeting, kind of understanding how they want to use their house, and if there's any additional items. If we're working with an architect, usually that has happened, but then we'll actually get the notes from the architect, and then we definitely go much more granular than most architects. So we'll do programming meeting, and then from there we'll put together a presentation. So we have a standard mood presentation. We have a standard design development, 1, 2, 3, as you go and make updates. But there's a specific, floor plan in the left-hand page that basically allows you to reference it when you're having a conversation. And then we literally will put everything in options with, delivery dates, ETAs, cost, where it falls in the budget. And let's see, what else is there? Lead time. And sizes, because size and scale is important. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, we didn't know how the size of that. And a lot of that is actually developed as you end up, drawing it, but it allows the client to understand as well. And also myself, or, if you're not putting the presentation together, you can actually say, oh, that's too big, So it really is more of a tool for the client, but it's really also a tool for us as we're presenting. And we put together
a special program to put that together?
InDesign, Adobe InDesign.
Okay, yeah.
And then once we actually put together the floor plan, and once the initial mood is signed off, we'll put together a budget, and we used, studio designer. It's changed over the years, the name, but studio designer. And basically we do a high and a low, and we've usually backed into a budget that the client has given us. If they haven't, then we're actually developing that, and this is where it lands. And so a lot of the times the clients are like, yeah, we want to track to the low. We have had a client that wants to track to the high, which is the best, but the very rare client. But we will track to the low. And so that's how we put that. And we basically, in our presentation, that's how we know where it falls in the budget. Because I do think as our clients are selecting these items, it's important for them to be educated on how, on all fronts, and how it impacts the schedule and or budget. And so from there, we'll basically go through the multiple process or multiple options. And then it gets down to, final, we update it every time after the meeting. And this is the final, thing, end all be all. And then from there, we actually do a styling presentation. So we actually are presenting accessories now to our clients, because when we're shopping, I usually take my clients shopping, and sometimes clients just don't have time. And so, and for high dollar items, if we're wanting to put a, specific sculpture, for example, on a fireplace mantle, when you walk in, those types of things I think need to be kind of found and also, size approximated. Whereas like the little tchotchkes that are in the bookcases, usually it's easy to go find those and curate that when you're shopping with them. But I think the idea is that we start that conversation early, and with art, we'll start it early so that we can actually design around those items. So yeah, that's that. And then for construction documents, after, that's more of like the furniture portion. And then for construction documents, that actually is, an ongoing, like we design presentation, those end up going into our construction documents. And then we will issue those out whenever the contractor has requested them. And then we, of course, have construction administration, all that. Yeah.
So you do manage the projects, like you oversee, like you mentioned, you go to site, you're troubleshooting, you're ensuring that tile is being laid according to the pattern and all that.
Exactly. We're not managing the contractor. I'd like to be super clear on that, but we are, we're managing the portion of our, and making sure design intent is being just upheld.
So if you're not managing this is really interesting. I'm glad you said this because designers are always asking about this. You're not managing the contractor. So does that mean that your client typically finds their own contractor? Or do you?
So typically, yeah, it's a good question. It's kind of a 50-50. We present a lot of the times contractors, but then lately, I think our bigger projects, we are working with another architect, and we're both jointly pitching contractors. And then either, most of the time, unless it's like they need us to come on board, and which we don't have time for those anymore. But usually, if they are bringing them to us, then we, it's very important to say you're not managing the contractor. I mean, I think that's like a huge thing to say to the client as well, because we are, that's their job. And I think we're not owner's reps. We are actually thinking about even putting together, because I do feel a lot of the times we are managing the contractor, but an owner's rep agreement, because there are owner's reps out there that actually are in charge of that. That's actually their job. But it's a much, much bigger project. Usually people are just wanting to make sure, things are being adhered to. But I don't think it probably should be a service we provide, because it is liability reasons.
Yeah.
I think there's
right.
a separate,
That's I think the big struggle that a lot of us go through is when you are, overseeing a construction project, you've selected all the furniture, you're ordering all the things, maybe you order and supply tile or not. But there's this, and we're going through a project right now where it's become quite frustrating and cumbersome overseeing trades that are not showing up when they say. And so the client asks, even though we're not technically a project manager, the client's asking us, well, when's the electrician coming? And so the contractor says, electrician's coming tomorrow at 2:00. Well, guess what? He can show up. And then who gets the heat? We do.
We do.
Not only is it very demoralizing for the design team because it's totally out of control, it starts to reflect poorly on our organization. Well, you guys can't keep them in check, but that's really our job. But you're right. You kind of sometimes find yourself in this weird kind of gray zone because you are the expert and you're advising the contractor on, which stain finish to use on the custom banister, or, we can't move the electrical, where we want it to go. So now we need to make a decision. So you are kind of acting as the owner, but to your point, we really shouldn't be considered that because of all the liability entailed and honestly just the frustration. That's how I feel.
Well, I know a lot of the times, and I think site meetings with the client actually helps a lot. And I know, again, it's really hard, I think, for some clients to actually go to site meetings with you. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're paying us, right? But it is, if somebody is asking why an electrician is there, it's really not, if we're not actually paying that sub, then we should not be, we're not in control. We are not managing that person. And, I think the higher quality contractors that you work with, and I think that's one thing that I've really started to appreciate is we are now not working with certain people because we can't, it's not worth it, because you end up managing them. And it's it's usually a dollar amount that they're trying to hit. And it's just this is not good.
When you try to say every which way, it ends up costing you money on the other end.
It just does. It always does.
Totally. So I know we've got so much to talk about, only a few minutes left. I wanted to still talk about your onboarding process. So you mentioned you have this operations manual, this index. What does that look like? When a new designer starts with you, is it here, read this Bible? Or how do you, those are the systems I'm interested in, because I think to scale, to your point, you need a process, right? Whether or not you want to scale, you need a process, because not only does it make your client comfortable and at ease with how you do things, you look more professional, of course. You also are able to manage their expectations. Then on the flip side, for the scalability, is it helps with new hires, because they come on, they're like, oh, this is what's expected of me. This is what I can do. I'm super curious on the internal side what you've done, because for me, I feel like I've spent so much time bettering my client-facing process. And I'm now really focused in on, okay, that's working really well, like a well-oiled machine. We kind of know what to do, A, B, and C. But internal, we're still trying to configure like, okay, so who enters what data when, and then how does that get passed on? And how do you document that? And train without too much detail, but like, how do you do that?
Yeah. So we have a person, Crystal, who is in charge of onboarding right now. She's also in charge of our IT stuff. We actually are looking at potentially hiring somebody who is going to help with all of this onboarding. We are working on a document, 25-page document probably, but that basically kind of talks about roles and responsibilities. But that's kind of the RBD index. So we definitely show them where to go so they can know what their role is and kind of how team structure is set up. Also with the caveat that, this is just a guide, the expectation is that you are supposed to just help out in general. But I think the biggest factor is just, I think we have Allie, who's the director of operations, who is actually sitting down with each new hire and explaining kind of the harvest. So we track our time in harvest, like how to train or how to track your time. And then we have Crystal, who literally is just showing them where everything's at. And then just going through the index, but it's already there. And it literally is just a link that you can actually, so if we were to print it out, it'd probably be like, 50 pages. But it's all an internal RBD index that allows them to actually go and look. And then the handbook is always, I think, something that people overlook, with, hourly versus salaried, all of that, it's there's these nuances that you forget about. And I think it's important, to make sure that, new people who are especially different because they are not, either not paid for lunch or because they're not an hourly, employee. Those types of things I think need to just be addressed at front. So it's not just awkward whenever somebody said something incorrectly and you have to go back and backtrack, which is always fun, which happened recently. So it's like, no. So, making sure, I think the one thing that this next year, I'm making sure that we have the team, the training team in place to make sure that we are, crossing the T's and dotting our I's correctly so that we can make sure that, everybody feels comfortable and we're not making things awkward or pointing things out that really, it's just kind of like on a good analogy. It's like, I don't really want to talk about, I don't like this. And neither does the contractor put together something I don't really necessarily agree design intent wise. But the client hasn't seen it, or, it's like that fine line of like not being able to like bring something up and point something out. But if you have something that's just brought up, first and foremost, it's much easier to not make it a thing, just say it and, have your training manual in front and just things of what to say and what not to say, and make sure that this person is very clear on, she's hourly, which means X, she's salaried, which means X, those types of things. But yeah.
So that's interesting. So you have a combination of people who are on contract and people who are on salary.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's difficult. I think I've definitely toyed with maybe we should just do all salaried, but right now it's full, it's half and half.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's good for designers to hear because I think on the outside, it looks like when you get to successful design firms on Instagram, let's say, and everyone makes an assumption that it's all salaried employees. Oh my God, how will I get to that point? But, we've definitely had a combination of freelance contractors and salary. But my dream, like you, would be just to have everyone on salary. It just simplifies everything.
Yeah.
Everyone has the same benefit. We don't really have benefits, but they have the same like vacation. It feels like a very committed role as opposed to kind of project by project. But again, finances have to support that. But that's so good to hear.
Yeah, it's challenging. I think California too is just in itself a very different state than most as well. So there's a lot of laws which are great that are for the employee, and you have to categorizations, all of that. It's an entirely different podcast, but yeah, it's important though. It's very important to understand your state laws and local things.
Yeah, that's so true. And honestly, when I was first hiring, I did not know any of the laws, and I was probably
neither did I.
not fully following certain things, right? You're just busy and I need help. Okay, I'll pay you. And then it's like, oh, well, I should have been on salary because they've been working for me full-time hours for 2 years. And there's all these things. Okay. Yeah. Before we go, I want to know, is there anything else that we didn't quite touch on that you want to share you think is really useful? To this?
I would say that, my personal belief in running a larger business, it's medium-sized, is that I have the passion to be a platform for, I call artists because they are artists. And I want to allow people to have my family is what I call them, to have a place for them to be successful. And I think that mindset, is really important to have if you are wanting to grow and scale, because if you are, if it's just your name, you wanting to do everything, it doesn't allow people to feel like they can actually, come in and do their thing. And I think, stylistically, it is so important if you have a company to hire a senior designer with the same style. If you do, if there's anything remotely that says, that it shouldn't, that they're not, if you just didn't like the design exercise that they sent through, we actually have them submit a design exercise to understand, style. But it's the most important thing. And I think because it allows me to let go if I know they're aligned. And I think it's very important, though, as if you get these amazing people, to allow them to shine, to just basically learn how to let go. I think that's been my most challenging thing. But I also always, step back and say, I really want to be this platform for people because I love my job. And I know everybody who's coming here loves their job and why we got in the industry. And I think we can help so many families just love their house and create a much more organized place so that, they're not, at least they have a place to come back and be more well, and then of course the idea of being the platform for artists too. So just handmade local stuff. But yeah, my spiel is just, awesome. I think that's where I go back to, even though it's really difficult to sometimes say, wow, this is, I feel bad, being a service industry, I feel bad, doing things for people who are, who have tons of money, but they also are helping our industry and artists out as well. And they appreciate us. So it's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, everybody has a need and everybody has a desire. And I think you fulfill it. It's amazing. This has been a really insightful conversation. I feel like I have so many more questions.
Well, you're more than welcome to call me.
Yeah, thank you. It's so sweet of you. Truly, I'm so inspired by what you've done with your company and how you've grown it. And a funny little tidbit, RBD is also what my team calls our podcast because it's Resilient by Design.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So we have that in common.
We have a little common.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so phenomenal. I'm so thrilled that you came on to the podcast. Any last nugget? I feel like that was the nugget, but I have to say it just in case. I mean, I think your big nugget is you need to relinquish control and trust in your team, right? Is there anything else?
Relinquish control, trust in your team, and make sure you have a process and standards in place because it will make your life easier. Have somebody, literally delegate somebody to who's changing the paper in your printer. That is the simplest thing. And example of like the smallest thing, but you need to have a role defined.
So in your handbook, sorry, it's a quick question. So in your handbook, outline all the roles and what the responsibilities are?
I think if somebody asks you a question, I just got through reading Run Studio Run. And so this has been inspiring as well. But if you have somebody who's asked a question of like, hey, there's not paper in the printer, and say, hey, can you do that? Or let's find somebody who actually that's their job is to make sure there's paper in the printer. So it's just those little things is, it's not that it's a handbook thing, but it's for sure, those should be thought through though, in roles and responsibilities. I mean, the smallest little things. takes time, but it's the most important thing.
And it will evolve over time as you grow and the
It will.
roles change in the organization. When you first start
Definitely.
out, you're changing the paper, you're clicking Staples order, you're selecting the fabric, you're meeting the client at their like bougie house. Like you're literally wearing all the hats. But if you want to grow and have a little bit more time yourself, you need to document and decide who's going to be responsible for what. Oh my gosh, so good.
Exactly. Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Regan, for joining me today. Before we send off whatever, can you let everybody know where they can find and follow you?
Yes. So Regan Baker Design is Instagram. Also reganbakerdesign.com is the website. And of course, Facebook is Regan Baker Design. Follow us there. That's we've got a lot of great behind the scenes and some great projects that we just recently photographed that we'll be sharing soon.
That's fantastic. I can't wait to follow along on your journey and possibly have you back in a little while to see where your company's at, because it's just like the sky's the limit. It's awesome.
Yeah, there's some fun things brewing. So we should chat more.
Absolutely, for sure. All right. Thank you so much, Regan.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't that wonderful? I mean, I'm in awe, totally, Regan, of what you have done with your business, especially over the last few years. We didn't even really talk about it. I mean, I wanted to ask you and I completely forgot because there were so many things I wanted to ask her, but about sort of going through the pandemic and what that looked like and how her team has just seamlessly grown and how she's shifted and following, I don't know. So good. So good. I love, one of my biggest takeaways from that episode was how they schedule an hour for lunch for everyone. I mean, how many design firms that are doing that? I'm certainly not doing that. I mean, maybe half an hour. Usually I just eat at my desk, right? Because I've got to pick up the kids and my day's short already. And I never really give myself that time to pause. And my team is not, and so then I'm not modeling that for my team. That was a really big takeaway for me. I love learning about different companies' organizational structures, especially in the design world. And how CEOs run their business week to week. For those of us looking to take a step back in our business and grow a team that can manage it, what does that look like? How can you still stay on top of the details without being in the weeds? So I think Regan's structure is really interesting and helpful. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I would actually really love to hear from you guys. I mean, feel free to post in the Designer Meetup Facebook group or just DM me on Instagram. But is this a topic that interests you? Like, I'm not sure how many designers or architects or stagers or creative entrepreneurs that are listening are looking to grow and scale their business. Because I know a lot of designers are like, no, I don't want to scale, but I do want to get more things under control and I want to have bigger projects. But how many of you are looking to scale to the extent that Regan has? I'd be super curious to hear your thoughts. Unfortunately, on a podcast, you can't just comment below. So send me a DM or put a message in our Facebook group because I'd love to hear if you're interested, because if you are, I'll try and find other guests that can speak to this topic. All right. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, go check out The Power of Process. It will be coming very soon. It's on my website, rebeccahay.com/power of process. And you can learn more about it because process is really what keeps the business ticking and growing and allows you to scale. So if that's something that interests you, go check it out. And I'll see you soon.